Thank you very much for being here today, Thivanka.
Thank you, Yada.
First of all, we're going to talk about EDOTCO's expansion for the last year. So last year, EDOTCO has acquired 13,000 towers from Jazz in Pakistan. What's the rationale for this acquisition?
So there were two acquisitions in 2017 that we had carried out, and the entry into Pakistan, we did have a small business that was running then, which had a few towers that the team was operating on. Yeah. We executed on one transaction, which was by the name of Tanzanite, for approximately 700 towers. Now, the deal that we had signed, which is the 13,000 towers which you mentioned, that was on the background of the country economics and the development of the telco infrastructure. So basically the entry is based on the country macroeconomics, and the telecom space has a lot more to grow in our context. So why we entered the country is on different perspectives. We have the regulatory, we have the framework in which you operate in, and also the potential for the telecom space to expand, both from a population coverage as well as the evolution of technology. Mm-hmm. Now we feel that Pakistan offers a huge opportunity in the years to come, and more so the business that we acquired the 13,000 towers from is the #1 operator in the country. Now, this is a huge, a positive in us getting into a new country as well, because it gives you that comfort that your counterparty is of repute and a lot of stamina and strength, and that helps us. And this is something that we've done in the region. Mm-hmm. We know Asia well. Yeah. We operate in 5 other countries besides Pakistan. And we had the ability to leverage a lot of that skill set and operational know-how into Pakistan. So when we did that initial due diligence, we did feel that we had a synergy in being able to enter Pakistan and actually be able to execute well.
Any challenges during this M&A process?
I think it's the magnitude of the business per se. Now, if you look at, we do have a fairly large operation in Bangladesh, where we have just over 9,000 towers in that context. But in Pakistan, I think what we needed to do was look at, it wasn't a country that we were fully operational initially in, and this is scaling up quite significantly. If you look at our initial setup to the 700 to 13,000 towers, then we wanted to be sure that we can execute and manage the operations proper, and that's something we are very passionate about, that we execute on what we do. And in our M&A entry and the due diligence work that we carried out, this was a significant area that we focused on, because as with most Asian countries, energy, as in power availability, backhaul connectivity, quality of your towers, when we initially went into Pakistan, you see like rings of towers which are single tenanted, because each operator builds their individual towers without sharing it, literally at a stone's throw from each other. So that was a worry factor.
But it's a waste of kind of resources as well, right?
Exactly. So when we see that as both opportunity, as you rightly pointed out, because you can overlay that, as well as a bit of a concern because people are not sharing properly. But when we were exploring and then this deal came out, and we saw that the quality of the asset in terms of location, in terms of the span of the towers, in terms of spread that they had, was pretty interesting. Then we felt, okay, that makes sense. But that due diligence work, it takes a little bit of effort. And you have the usual forex exposures that you have to think through. you need to make sure that you have the resources. We do a lot of shared services functions at the group. Yeah. We needed to make sure that we had the ability to actually execute on the ground and make that. And sometimes when you're a little bit away from the footprint, it takes time, and this happens to be the furthest from our footprint from our HQ in Kuala Lumpur.
And how about the current stage of this acquisition?
So I think we have covered a lot of the aspects of the closure. We have a couple of regulatory approvals that are pending, which we have been continuously engaged with. No sooner we have those cleared, then hopefully in the next 1 or 2 months, ideally, we would look for closure, and we take the business and start running it.
We were looking forward to see the deal getting closed and make it happen.
Yeah, the team at EDOTCO is very, very keen to get this integrated and execute and deliver to the customer. That's something we're very, very passionate about.
Yeah. It is said that Bangladesh will be the market that EDOTCO will focus on in this year. So what's your opinion on Bangladesh? Where are the opportunities?
So Bangladesh is in an interesting phase in terms of telecom infrastructure in the country. They have moved to formalizing what we had those days as a no objection certificate to operate, your right of operation of a passive infrastructure company, to today moving into a proper license framework. Now there has been continuous public opinion feedback as well as regulatory process that has been running, where they have kind of given out the guidelines of the potential license framework to the market. And this is an area that we are focused on. We are obviously significantly invested in Bangladesh, so we are keen to ensure that the license framework is something that we comply to upfront, and this is an area of focus that we have put in a lot of effort to ensure that any local partnership that they are looking for, any structuring that is required, the commitments. Fair to say that given our operation in the country and now also our operations elsewhere, we are quite comfortable with what has come about. This is quite critical for us because with that, then your ability to grow in the market becomes a lot more comfortable, because you have a rigid, very robust and solid framework under which to operate. Yeah. And then you know that, just like some of the other markets that we are in, you have a clear set of regulatory and fiscal scenarios under which you operate.
Okay, and we talk about South Asian markets, and then now we're moving back to Southeast Asian market, where is the home base of EDOTCO. So EDOTCO headquartered in Malaysia and already made expansion in Myanmar through acquiring MTC, if I'm not So how about these two markets? Does EDOTCO have plans to make further expansion in these two markets?
So if I just go to Myanmar, this was one of our first entries beyond the Axiata footprint, and where we were going into a market that was already pretty, I would say, mature in terms of TowerCo play in this market. And here, whilst M&A is a nice add-on, it's not a dire requirement in a way, because the organic business has a lot of potential in its own right, simply because almost 100% of new build comes from organic play, which goes to the tower operators, because it's a very mature framework for TowerCos. And MNOs, I think, also quite clear that there is clear benefit by giving the new build and the co-location to the tower operators that are in the country. And we feel that whilst we will grow in the business, that M&A wise it would be nice to have if it comes about, there is adequate organic growth that can, help to just expand our footprint in country. Malaysia, on the other hand, has a lot of smaller TowerCos that operate in different states, etc. Now, these do give you opportunity to, explore partnerships, collaborations, and even acquisitions at one point. And being our home country, we're quite keen to see how we can grow our footprint. We have done well, I would argue, from an organic perspective of growth. However, a little bit of inorganic add-ons would be nice. Will we do a significant sale and lease back like we did with our sister company Telecom at the inception? We'll be open to it. However, as you would understand, this requires pretty long discussions and communications with the MNO operators, and it also has to be a point in time in which the MNO is also wanting to let go of its infrastructure assets and lease it back. So until it comes to that level of maturity, we might not have a sale and lease back per se, but definitely for the smaller size deals, we'll be very, very focused on trying to see whether we can get something executed.
And how about the Indian and Indonesian markets? Do you see there are opportunities there?
I honestly think that there is a lot of availability of assets for sale, without doubt, but in terms of whether we would want to go in an aggressive form, I think is left to be seen. We would like to see some stabilization in the Indian market. There's a lot of consolidation, there's a lot of change in play that's going on with the geo kind of momentum that's going on in the market. You would want to take a bit of a back seat in terms of when you want to get into the country and when you want to really explore that in a more holistic manner. I think India less so than Indonesia. Indonesia more from a regulatory point of view, I think we'll be a little cautious about going in without an ability to control, because the regulation is quite clear cut as to how you can, as a foreign entity, how you can control asset. Then we are generally a controller of our footprints in wherever the entities that we are in. So that's, whilst it's extremely interesting for us, we would want to see how that regulatory framework works out over the years before we possibly. But it is two countries that we do observe. We do keep it on the radar. We check to see all the changes that's going on. However, not something that we are gone into in an aggressive manner.
Are there any other markets in Asia or globally that you are looking at for the moment?
We are pretty much Asian focused. So we are, as much as the team would, I'm sure, like to go out to Europe and America and whatnot. I think we're very much an Asian focused entity at the moment. And in that footprint, I do honestly believe there's a lot of opportunity already out there, and it's for us to try and work out a deal that makes sense to us in terms of integration and execution. And when it comes to that, I do feel that the likes of Thailand, Laos, do offer interesting prospects for us to consider. And I think in the recent times you would have seen, we did announce a MOU with a partner in Thailand as well. So it is markets that we are exploring. And as things progress, these are areas that we would like to pay more focus on, rather than go out of that Asian mindset for the moment. However, once we stabilize the Pakistan integration, once it's closed out, and also get our Asian footprint operating at an optimum level the way we would want it internally, then possibly the Pacific Rim and beyond is something that we'll consider at that time.
Are there any kind of regulatory issues for the Thailand and Laos markets Because like for Indonesia, you have the foreign ownership restrictions. And how about these two markets?
They all have their caveats, as you rightly pointed out. However, we do feel that they are come to a stage in time where the progress in these frameworks have advanced quite significantly, and there is potentially an opening that's coming about. So if it doesn't debars us from getting proper ownership and control and being able to leverage our scale and operational expertise to the country, then it doesn't really make sense. But our initial check seems to be that they are very progressive and looking to open out the markets. And in this context, we are obviously trying to be in pole position to ensure that we can execute. So it is yes.
So what do you think about the key drivers for M&A activities in the telecom tower space for Asia or globally for 2018?
So this one's it's many faceted, but basically, even if you look at developed countries as well as like Asia, where we have some countries which are just rolling out 2G to the wider population, to going to 3G, 4G, and now the talk of 5G and IoT, etc. Now here, with the increase in data consumption per consumer, the requirement to densify our networks is very evident. And it also requires a lot of capital expenditure for the MNOs to ensure that they can stay relevant in this field, because there is lots of competing industries with the specific telco as well. You have the Googles and Facebook, getting into that space slowly as well. So they do need to be more cost efficient, and they do need to be, I would say, focused on their core, which is managing the consumer and the radio network. And this is where I feel that the infrastructure players have a part to play. What we do is make a tower or a site, as you call it, because we are moving away from those towers that you see on the road to a location. And that location we are able to deliver in a very efficient, cost efficient, and a capex efficient manner, which allows multi-tenanting for multiple technologies. And that, I feel, would be the drive for the telcos to slowly start moving from trying to manage their own infrastructure to giving it out. And both in Asia as well as globally, because even with 5G, even with the advent of new technology coming in, IoT, etc., you still also have the cities and the countries looking for greener technology, looking for more aesthetic structures which blend in with the environment. So it does create a requirement for further spend by the mobile operators. So they have the option of carving out or trying to do everything, the technology evolution plus the infrastructure rollout. If you see what's happened in the recent past, then it's quite evident that they decided to move out of, where possible and where it makes sense, out of the infrastructure play and focus on the core, so that they can actually be a lot more cost efficient and effective in terms of how they execute. So I do think opportunity will come about. Asia more so, because we tend to leapfrog a lot of the scenarios we are in, and we are able to execute much quicker. And if they want to really have that impact, then you would see that a lot of the MNOs would just take a stance and say, okay, let's carve out the infrastructure, which is where we could play a part in, and focus on the technology evolution and service and quality of service to customers.
So EDOTCO has successfully raised a significant sum of equity, funds through equity last year, and with some new investors coming in. So what do you look for new investors?
This is interesting, and this comes from Axiata actually, because Axiata is a MNO player in the grand scheme of things. They're operator of mobile networks, and they saw this independent TowerCo as being very critical and useful in the footprints that were there, and because we were like a first mover literally in all the markets except in Myanmar, where we were like one of the first to come in and do a full country network operation which provides to everybody and anybody without any biases. And here when we were growing the company, we were looking for investors who would come in who not just writes us a check, and that's really not what was required for a group like Axiata. What they needed was strategic input and affiliations, which helps to expand the innovation that we are looking into. So what we in specific, and this is where, if I can single out one of the investors is like INCJ, where they were able to introduce a lot of energy design and even Indo solutions to help us look at various products and services to consumers, which is quite different to the traditional tower play that is there. So we were looking for parties that bring in a stronger shareholding in terms of giving it an independent outlook. We were also looking to see where there is synergies, because we are in essence a party that sells your location and services and manage those that location for you. And if you look at the shareholders, you will see clearly that some of them offers you that location outprint, and the other part is innovation. I mean, as you know, we have done carbon fiber towers, we have executed on bamboo towers, and this is an area which I think also caught the attention of some of the investors, and they felt that this is a good synergy, and it works well because they're aligned in the views as well. And with you want to avoid a Kodak moment in a way, and traditional TowerCos could stay in this space very comfortably for a few years without innovating itself, and you could get caught out. But with technology advancing so rapidly and your towers becoming like a site, you do need to innovate yourself and ensure that we reinvent the wheel and grow and be relevant in the markets that we're playing. And that's really what we look to see, whether the shareholders who are coming in were able to help us to add value to that, give us green initiatives in terms of design, whether there can be some input in how we can change the way we do a structure and to host things, as well as how we can grow from a technology perspective and stay appropriate to the business we're in.
And does EDOTCO have fundraising plans either through equity or debt in the 2018?
We still have some of the funds which we raised in the previous equity round. A bulk of that would go towards funding the Pakistan closure, and thereafter the remaining would go for, like what we discussed earlier, some of the smaller deals that we would look to execute in the markets. Now, if there is a requirement for further funding towards 2018 latter part or even next year, then I think we would look to either as a preference the debt market initially, and then if required to the equity side to see whether there is a requirement. But there is no rush to execute on any of this as of today, but certainly I think in the next 12 months or so, it's something that we'll have to look to see whether whether we go out for a bond or a debt or capital kind of equity side capital fundraising.
But lastly, how does the rise of disruptive technologies impacting the telecom tower industry?
This is, I mean, we do have drones, we have the Googles and Facebooks here as well, and you got satellite technology and all that. But fundamentally, I think in the short to medium term, our traditional business is very much what it is going to be. But with IoT technology coming up and the requirement for continuous connectivity, like for self-driving cars, virtual reality, AI that's coming about, the connected world is becoming more and more relevant, and with that you do need to ensure that you have the infrastructure to provide connectivity at that micro level, which becomes an increasing challenge as things go on. And what we do, and as you can see from like the design or the material innovation that we have executed over the years, like the bamboo towers, for example, we do research continuously to see where we need to play in to ensure that as the industry or the telco industry or the requirement for connectivity increases, how do we make sure that what we provide stays relevant. One part I would like to state is that if you look at the tower today, right, you get a fairly decent amount of space. You can put a generator, battery bank, whatnot, and provide power. But as you move to much more micro locations, that becomes a huge challenge, because you can't have those huge generators and fuel tanks and whatnot to give you power. And then with the whole world moving towards greener technology, you also need to look at renewable source of energy, etc. So this becomes quite relevant in how we do, and if we how we do things, and if we are focused and we pay attention to the evolution that's happening around us, then whilst the disruption is out there, we could stay very relevant. This is like the WhatsApp and the Vibers. Either you stay away as a mobile network operator, or you embrace it and you run with what's going on. So for us, if you're going from traditional ground-based towers and rooftops to sites and going into greener technology and potentially even semi-active, where you have a plug-and-play service offering to your consumers, it makes the headache of the MNO go away, and we take care of that, because that is our bread and butter. Yeah. And I think if we stay relevant in that space, then disruptive technology impact to us would be a lot less, and we still get to grow for several more years as we go through.
Thank you so much, Thivanka.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insights, and I'm sure our audience will enjoy watching the interview.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.